Yeah.
We had a number of interesting things, including two Democrats fighting with each other because of redistricting, but also some consequences for anybody who voted for impeachment who was a Republican.
Well, isn't that right? It's hard to not look at last night's results through the Trump prism once again. I know this has been a bit of a trend over the course of primary season, and that remains the case. Last night, 3 Republican House members who voted to impeach Donald Trump were on the ballot. 2 of them in Washington state have yet to be called. But to your point, in Michigan, not a good result for Peter Meijer, freshman congressman. He lost to John Gibbs, the Trump-picked candidate who was actually propped up by Democrats. You know, we've seen this a couple of times. Democrats investing in ads to help him, at least indirectly, because they believe he might be easier to beat in the general. The 2 incumbents you mentioned, both of whom appear on this broadcast from time to time, was a very bitter contest between 2 former allies. Haley Stevens won the race against Andy Levin. That's the result of a redrawn map and a loss of 1 seat for Democrats, David.
And she had a little help from the outside, didn't she?
Yes, that's for sure. This actually became a very expensive race, considering the fact that it was a House district, and Democrats knew that they were going to be losing this. Some public interest groups poured an enormous amount of money into that contest. Arizona is really worth looking at. I don't know if you've had a chance to dig through these results either, David, but this was definitely a good night for Trump in Arizona.
And Peter Thiel, right?
Peter Thiel, how true.
So tell us about Blake Masters.
Blake Masters is going to be running against Senator Kelly. He won the Republican Senate primary, backed by Peter Thiel, of course, and backed by Donald Trump, a pretty formidable candidate there. He won by a long shot, and he was expected to win by a good 18, 20 points, as he did. As you look down ballot, though, some really interesting races here beyond the governor's race that I'll mention in a moment. Trump-endorsed candidate and election denier is now the head of the election system there, Secretary of State, or won the primary for such. Mark Fincham is his name. He could become the top elections official in Arizona, which is something that has some Democrats and Republicans concerned. Also, Rusty Bowers, remember him from the January 6th committee, the Speaker of the House in Arizona. He was actually trying to vie for an open state Senate seat, and he lost that race, not on the right side of Trump. The gubernatorial contest, though, is still up in the air. Carrie Lake, former TV anchor, endorsed by Trump, claimed victory last night, David, even though she was really not ahead. Basically a statistical tie with Karen Robson, who was endorsed by Mike Pence. That's a proxy battle between Trump and Pence, one that has yet to be decided and one we're looking at very closely.
Yeah, I don't know, Joe. There might be some correlation between Trump endorsements and people who've been on television a lot. Maybe there's a future there. They also have in Michigan the gubernatorial. But take us back to the Senate race in Arizona. Mark Kelly against Blake Masters. Do we have a sense of who's ahead?
Well, listen, it's difficult to tell and kind of trust polling right now. Mark Kelly is considered to be severely endangered, though, as a Democrat. That is a seat that Republicans are vying for and think they can pick up. That's going to be one of the races that helps to decide the balance of power in the Senate. Missouri was also in play last night. Did you hear about the Erics? David, did you hear Eric won?
And also got endorsed by Donald Trump, right? We're just not sure which Eric.
That's right. Eric Greitens, the former governor who actually left that seat early and was accused of sexual harassment. You might know him from the rhino hunting ad that he put together, where he's walking down the street with an assault-style weapon looking for rhinos. He lost the race to Eric Schmidt, the attorney general. Both of them love Trump. Both of them were election deniers. But they never got an endorsement until the night before. Donald Trump was pressed to say something, and he endorsed Eric without a last name. Last night, you'd like this, David, Donald Trump congratulated Eric. He said, "Great going. Big night, Eric," in quotes. Thank you. We just don't know which Eric.
You can't make it up. So, Joe, put all this together. Does it tell us anything, do you think, about the Senate balance?
That's a tough question to ask right now. Democrats think that they can hold the Senate, and either way, it's going to be within a couple of seats. Blake Masters could be a formidable candidate. If you're looking at Arizona, that's going to be a tough race. But if you talk to a lot of experts, they see the Senate as a draw right now. The House remains a very different prospect. Although after that result in Kansas that we saw last night, where we started this hour, the abortion vote, drew such enormous turnout in Kansas that a lot of folks are wondering if they're actually gauging the electorate in the right way following the Supreme Court ruling on Roe. Some 70% of voters who registered in Kansas after the Supreme Court ruling were Democrats.
I'm so glad you brought us back to that Kansas election, because it really is pretty remarkable. And it does, I don't want to engage in identity politics, but it does raise a question whether that so-called suburban woman is back in play.
It's certainly in play. It's just a question of which direction it's going to go. It's such a divisive issue that Democrats and Republicans know that a lot of races will be decided within that demographic, and it's one that you're going to hear a lot of deliberate language when in terms of advertising and placement of money in the next couple of months. Now that we saw that result last night, as I said a little while ago, we need to figure out if that's a bellwether for the nation or a story about very effective organizing in Kansas, whether that can be duplicated in other states.